Hello, dear colleagues. It's an honor for me to present my project. I am very grateful to the University of Alberta, DUSS initiative, jointly with the Vienna Institute for Austrian and Central European Studies, for the opportunity to be here. So, the topic of my project is trauma and memory as social-cultural construct and their representations in Holocaust literature. The impact that the Second World War had on the life experience of different generations seems to be more and more significant with the passage of time. Undoubtedly, the Holocaust events, which shocked the world, became the greatest trauma of the post-war period, the echo of which continues to these days. From the second half of the 20th century until today, learning of the Holocaust history and its consequences is mostly done through the written words and literature. Let us emphasize that there are concepts and terms that are sign of times. Such concepts are memory and trauma. They are firmly connected in the consciousness of modern man, which provokes close attention to the past, to narrative about the past, to the ways of overcoming them. It was believed that disputes and conflicts over the memory of the Great War and Holocaust would gradually recede into the past. But we are witnessing the reverse process. The memory of the Holocaust is becoming a cosmopolitan issue. So the objects of the research are the books of Ukrainian authors. The authors and novels were chosen to follow certain tendencies and realize the following goals: to study similarities and differences in the interpretation of the Holocaust topic in Ukrainian contemporary literature, to emphasize common points, main concepts of such phenomena as trauma and memory, to study the topic of anti-Semitism and concentration camps, to study the role of real historical documents, photos, and figures in selected texts. Consider the affiliation of the selected authors and books to different artistic periods, the presence of different genre forms, the use of traditional and modern language and constructions. The traumatic Holocaust events gained their current significance in the late 70s. After the Eichmann trial in Jerusalem and the trial of Auschwitz criminals in Frankfurt, then appeared the American 4-episode TV movie Holocaust that had considerable resonance. At the same time, appeared studies that tried to research the trauma phenomena, its influence on future generations. In the opinion of many scholars, the greatest tragedy for the Jews and humanity in general is the psychological legacy that the survivors brought with them. The researcher Nathan Kellerman states, "I am particularly interested in how collective trauma affects everyone at a very deep level. It even passes from generation to generation and becomes part of cultural identity. Thus, researching the phenomena of trauma in literature, Kathy Caruth concluded that the concept trauma became widely used in psychiatry, and it is understood as the wound that struck the mind. Philip Code draws attention to the fact that the theoretical substantiation of the trauma phenomena in modern era connected with Derrida's deconstructive theory, which tried to find hidden meanings of the concept, and Freud's psychoanalysis theory, as the basis for understanding the ideas of the traumatic phenomena and overcomes trauma by using the talk therapy. These theoretical approaches became generally used and accepted for the analysis of traumatic writing in general and in relations to Holocaust literature in particular. So, one of the goals of this project is how collective trauma affects everyone at very deep levels, passes from generation to generation, becomes a part of cultural identity. Because remembering, processing, and forgetting trauma are all points of the same continuum that we label as memory. So this testifies to the binary nature of the both concepts. Trauma is an integral part of the cultural memory of humanity and every individual. Memory is expressed in narratives in which the most traumatic events can be repressed. This is how memory begins to be associated with the concept of trauma. And we already see how, along with the typology of memory, a typology of trauma arises. The organization of memory is based on trauma. Famous American literary critic and historian Le Carpa noted that since memory is a defining part of experience, the problem of the relationship between history and memory is the problem of the relationship between history and experience, expressed on a smaller scale. Psychologists define memory as an element of consciousness at the highest level of human subjectivity, which is subject to the perception of the environment, a sense of self-identity, and abstract knowledge about the world. All that was mentioned above confirms that memory cannot be considered as a stable construct. It changes under the influence of the whole series of social-cultural, historical, and individual psychological factors, which are emphasized and analyzed in the researched texts. Let us remind that the Holocaust studies in Western countries and Western European humanitarian space were logically caused by memory studies. Absolutely new approach to this topic in Ukraine became possible only as a reaction to society changes in the 1990s, refused from the negative stereotypes of the Ukrainian Jewish dialogue, silencing the painful and shameful pages of our history became possible, according to Miroslav Shkandry, because of postmodernism and postcolonialism phenomena in literature. Historically, the Orange Revolution in 2004 opened up more space for discussion forbidden topics. Literature should play a leading role in giving readers the opportunity to solve these and other similar sensitive issues. There is an expansion of the historical memory, geographical boundaries of the catastrophe, which confirms the existence of groups that form a request for this memory, and Ukraine definitely belongs to it. The connection between memory and space defines as memory carries those places with which significant religious, historical, and biographical events are connected. Except Baben Yar, almost the only tragic place that was legalized in Soviet literature, in modern Ukrainian literature appeared new geographical Holocaust markers. This was confirmed by researcher Assmann. She said, European nations are connected with the memorial places where the genocide took place. Therefore, they encounter a variety of national memorials. It was also reflected in the Yuri Vanechuk's novel Tango of Death. The central hero of the novel is Lviv, Lvov, Lemberg, and again Lviv. Noble and urban, aristocratic and batyar, mystical and very pragmatic. The stories of main characters take place in two parallel time spaces. One storyline of the novel is the story of four rebel families, Ukrainian, German, Polish, and Jewish, in Lviv in the 1930s, including the events of the Second World War. The second storyline tells about the 1980s and up to the present days. It is the story about the researcher of the mysterious dead Arcanum script, Professor Jarosz. Later, he met one of those surviving boys, Josip Milker, one of the authors of the tune Tango of Death, which was performed in the famous Yaniv concentration camp. This is how the 70-year circle of history from pre-war times to the present closes. The stylistic representation of these time spaces contains fictional and non-fictional elements. The fictional part, written with the help of magical realism. The search of ancient manuscript, the mystery of the musical composition Tango of Death, which was performed by prisoners in Yaniv concentration camp in Lviv. The Holocaust topic and several traumatized generations, Ukrainian, Polish, Jewish, the impossibility of an open dialogue between them became the key topic of the book. The central part of the text is the musical piece of art, Tango of Death. It unites all the layers of the book and serves as a historical facts in the Janovska concentration camp. The Germans conducted torture and executions to music, and the orchestra members always played the same tune, Tango of Death. According to the testimonies of many prisoners and the Vinichuk's researchers, the melody Tango of Death was played when prisoners were sent to death in the Janov camp. This melody was a well-known composition in Poland in the 1930s. I will try to represent it to you if you don't mind. So, therefore, the topic of Shoah in Lviv is one of the key topics in this book. The writer not only resorts to archival materials to create and illuminate the plot of historical novel, but also edits photos as an important pillar of memory. But despite this, there are many very controversial topics in the novel too. I want to summarize that Vinichuk's book is a rather difficult book about difficult pages of our history. And even if the author tries to hide something and protect Ukrainians from difficult traumas, it is impossible to have a future without admitting the mistakes of one's traumatic past. In the same way, as in Vinichuk's book, in Tatiana Pakhomova's novel, I, You, and Our Painted and Unpainted God, the history of Lviv and Lviv ghetto is presented. Pakhomova's novel is based on real events of 1941-1945, on the real story of the Ukrainian rural family, Maria and Stepan Sichevlyuk-Vrublevsky. Therefore, we emphasize the realistic nature of this text. The writer said that the idea of the novel arose after a hike with their pupils once in the forest near Radekho, Lviv region. The children fired 2 slabs from the Jewish cemetery. Pahomova remembered in her interview, "We came across the story of a woman whom I knew personally, but had no idea that such a situation was in her life. During the Second World War, she hid a Jewish family and saved the lives of 3 people. They spent 800 days under the stable. This novel is about 800 days that connected Ukrainian and Jewish family from the Lviv region during the Holocaust events." The genre of the novel can be defined as historical and family saga. Little Mira, with her mother and sister, managed to escape from the ghetto, is rescued by a peasant whose dead daughter she resembled. Due to the persecution of the Germans, she is forced to live in a dark basement, play at night in the village cemetery. They are constantly in danger. The family, which has a terrible history of extermination in its genetic memory, continues to save itself in the 20th century. We observe that the author raises in the novel the issue of individual and collective trauma and memory, and says of their ways of their interpretation also disproves many stereotypes about Ukrainian and Jewish, their opposition and coexistence during the war times. Modern Ukrainian literature is marked by a special attraction to urban problems, as we see. We see this also in the 2 previous texts, and also in Maxim Dupeshko's novel, History, Wars, an Entire Apple Orchard. The image of Chernivtsi during the period of 1935 and 1993 is modeled, which is divided into 3 time layers. When the city was a part of northern Bukovina and belonged to Romania, its history during the Second World War, and the story related to the Soviet history of the city. Therefore, each period is represented by 3 hero narrators. The main character of the novel, Pavel Bachinsky, a resident of Chernivtsi, his mother Maria, and a narrator who is connected with our times, in whose image we can probably recognize the author himself. The author shows the history of the city through the story of his main character, his belonging to different cultural and ethnic groups, because his family has Ukrainian, Polish, and German roots. Therefore, in the novel, Pavel asks himself, where should our Polish, Ukrainian, German family run to? The Republic of Poland did not exist, neither did Ukraine. Germany turned into the Third Reich. Where should local Jews run to? And the local Ukrainians, for whose sake northern Bukovina was supposedly taken. Nazism and communism are considered by the author as equally unacceptable ideologies that led to mass crimes and genocides. This is also emphasized by the researchers of the memory paradigm, who advocate the creation of common European memory culture that would cover all crimes committed in the 20th century. The Holocaust topic realized in the storyline of Pavel and Dora. Dora Kapman and her father Ariel passing through the Chernivtsi ghetto and the camp in Transnistria. Dupeshko creates an image of Chernivtsi as a territory of resistance. In particular, the author introducing real historical and cultural figures into the text show the activities of the Polish diplomacy, Grzegorza Szymanowicza, who helped about 800 Polish Jews in Bukovina in 1939, escaping from Hitler, who occupied Poland, and the activities of Bukovin Schindler, mayor of Chernivtsi in 1941-1942, Trajan Popovich, who you can see his memorial plaque on the slide. According to the author's version, in this camp also died so-called Anna Frank from Bukovina, Paul Celan's cousin, Zelma Meinbaum-Eisinger. One of the main topics of the text is suppression of memory through violent revision of the Second World War events. Summarizing all that has been said, I want to say that the false opinion that any attempts to turn the Holocaust into art will erase its significance is deeply wrong. Talking, remembering the Holocaust, and writing about its traumas means never repeating the mistakes of the past. Thank you for your attention.